I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Thursday, the 1st of February 2018. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. In the headlines tonight nationally, Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris has dismissed allegations of sexual assault in the Attorney General's chambers. Internationally, Donald Trump has signed an order to keep Guantanamo Bay open. And in sport, an International Olympic Committee member is calling the CAS Russia ruling craven and spineless. We have the details of these stories, the weather and Carib update all ahead in tonight's edition of SKN News Now. Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris says his government is not going down the road of responding to allegations that a serious crime of a sexual nature occurred in the Attorney General's chambers. At his monthly press conference today, Prime Minister Harris was asked to respond to the allegation and ask whether there would be any investigation launched into the matter. Attorney General Honorable Vincent Byron, who is generally attendance at the monthly press conferences, was absent today. Given the seriousness of the allegation that women have been sexually assaulted on government property, the Prime Minister's response was surprising. Instead of addressing the question head-on, he accused the opposition leader of acting like a wounded animal for raising an alarm that the safety of the country's women may be under threat while doing business on government property.
As I know, it is within character of the leader of the opposition to at times behave like a wounded animal and to destroy anything and anyone in front of him. I can't speak for the Honorable Attorney General, who is not here. And I would expect the Attorney General, being a man of law, is better suited than I am to make his own defense. So I would really want to leave the sometimes wild and outrageous utterings of a man who should know better and not really to get drawn in.
While Prime Minister Harris claimed that his government would always seek to act with integrity, he completely discarded the allegation of a sexual assault in the Attorney General's chambers and the serious implications it could hold for his government and how it views the safety and well-being of women in the Federation. Dr. Harris also went on to suggest that Dr. Douglas and his St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party should be the ones to pursue the matter.
But what I would say that the Cabinet and the government at all levels would want to be remembered as a government of integrity that pursues the highest standard of conduct and behavior. And we expect no less from any member of the Cabinet and of the country. And those who would prefer to make scandalous allegations about people, if they have evidence, they should take it to the appropriate authority rather than engage in political mudslinging and serious matters, in fact, impacting upon other people. So he knows if there is any breach of any law, what should be done and where the party should go to. And so I would just want to not go down that road with him.
In 2017, 52 sex crimes, including rape and sexual assault, were recorded in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's also a well-known fact that sex crimes are desperately underreported by victims who often feel ashamed and fearful. Violence in general against women is also a concern, as the dozens of homicides in 2017, 2 women and a teenage girl were murdered by male assailants. January has just come to a close, and already the Federation has recorded its first female homicide victim, who's believed to have died at the hands of her former boyfriend. In other news, St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party chairperson Honourable Marcella Liebert says while the Electoral Office refuses to respond to the party's concerns about irregularities in its work and operation, they must be made to answer, as it undermines the country's fundamental democratic principles. Echoing concerns by the party leader, Right Honourable Dr. Denzel Douglas, and also recently raised concerns by the Nevis Reformation Party over the alleged incompetence and impropriety of persons connected with the Electoral Office, operational irregularities, and even alleged breaches of electoral laws, Liebert says someone must be made to answer these charges. She also expressed deep concern over the overtly political and biased stance taken by key persons employed by the Electoral Commission.
We have very strong evidence of what is happening with respect to, or not happening as the case may be, with respect to these electoral matters. As the leader said, remember right after the elections, the office was closed for like 6 months or something like that. I mean, there were no lists, there were no, being publicized. People couldn't go into register because the office was not open. And up to now, as we speak, some almost 3 years later, there's been no explanation to the public as to why the office was shut. We heard that they were carrying out some investigation in there in terms of the Electoral Office, and we're still waiting for the investigation. We said, well, are the results or whatever they were carrying out in terms of the results of this investigation into Electoral Office. But as we go along, for example, we have a registration officer in constituency number 1 who constantly takes to Facebook to say all sorts of negative things about the leader of the opposition and make all sorts of other negative comments about the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. And he is the registration officer for polling division number 1. This is just totally unacceptable. I guess he has his politics like everybody else, but if you occupy a certain position, you should behave a certain way, which is the same thing I'm saying about the speaker. And so you can't have registration officers out there criticizing and saying all sorts of negative things about political parties. When this government changed, the first set of objections they had probably sometime last year, for example, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party was not invited at all to these objections. We had to find out about them and impose ourselves on them to know exactly what is happening. So clearly they have an agenda which they're carrying out.
Ms. Liebert has also again raised the fact that the Electoral Office, among other things, has failed in one of its principled responsibilities, publishing the voters' lists on time based on the schedule prescribed by law.
Lists are supposed to come out on the 15th of every month and on the last day of every month. On the 15th, you have the monthly list, and on the last day of the month, you have the monthly revised list for the month before. So, for example, in January, the monthly list for December would come out on the 15th of January, and the monthly revised list for December would come out at the end of January. About the 23rd of January, that's this week or last week, is when the monthly list for December is being posted. And this happens frequently, that they're posted late, and in terms of the revised list, in many instances, not posted at all. And so you have all these anomalies that are happening. And then when you look, people's names just disappearing from the list. You don't know how the name came off the list. And then when you go, as I said to them, they're saying, oh, go and re-register, which is clearly part of the strategy of what is happening inside here.
Liebert indicated that the party will take legal action against the Electoral Office if necessary to force them to provide answers and to regularize their operations in the interest of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Lance Corporal with the St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force, Schultz Gift, has been charged with 2 counts of possession of ammunition by the police. The soldier, a resident of Sandy Point, is one of 2 persons who were taken into police custody in relation to ammunition found during a joint operation between the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force and the SKNDF. The other person has been released without charge. On Friday, 26th January, Gift and another passenger were stopped and searched by police and the SKNDF in the Greenlands area near the Springfield Cemetery. 50 rounds of .45 caliber ammunition and 50 rounds of 9mm ammunition were found in their possession. Lance Corporal Gift has since been granted $50,000 bail with 2 sureties and will next appear in court on April 9th. As part of the considerations of his bail, Lance Corporal Gift has been required to surrender all travel documents in his possession to the magistrate's court and must report to the Sandy Point Police Station every Friday between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And still in police news, officers are again looking for the public's cooperation in locating a wanted man. 45-year-old Marlon Heath of Trafalgar Village is being sought out to answer the charge of having caused grievous bodily harm in an incident on 16th November last year. Marlon Heath is 5 feet 8 inches tall, of dark complexion, has dark brown eyes and dreadlocks. Police say it is possible that Heath may have cut his hair. Anyone knowing of Marlon Heath's whereabouts are being urged to contact the Bastille Police Station at 465-2241, the nearest police station, or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-8477. In other news, following an autopsy on Tuesday by resident pathologist Dr. Adrian Nunez, it has been confirmed that the Walwyn Avenue woman found lifeless in her home did not succumb to foul play. According to Dr. Nunez's report, 41-year-old Rosella Douglas Lewis's death was as a result of bilateral pulmonary embolism secondary to hypertension. Douglas Lewis, who was on medication to treat her hypertension, was found unresponsive by her father in what appeared to be a pool of blood. She was pronounced dead at the home by the district medical doctor. Dr. Nunez was also able to confirm that there were no other injuries to her body. Meanwhile, police are yet to disclose the details of a spate of robberies which occurred in Nevis in the final days of January. Word has come to light, however, that a number of residents in the Cotton Ground neighborhoods of Ridge Road and Round Hill have had their homes robbed, some at gunpoint. In a spree of robberies, all on the night of 27th January, the properties of Nika Van Liemont, Susan Garden and Don Mills were all relieved of a number of valuables, including cash and electronics. Although nothing has been said publicly, police sources have confirmed the incidents and say they are investigating. There were 242 break-ins in 2015, followed by a massive jump to 415 in 2016. In 2017, however, there was a slight reduction, 2%, in break-ins down to 407. Larcenies have steadily increased over the 2 years following the 216 recorded in 2015, with 390 recorded in 2016 and 414 in 2017. 65 robberies were recorded in 2015, with 57 recorded in 2016 and 81 in 2017. That brings us to the end of this evening's news presentation. Stay with us. Still to come in just a moment, today's international developments. United States President Donald Trump has decided to keep the notorious Guantanamo Bay military prison in Cuba open using an executive order. His predecessor Barack Obama promised to close it but failed. Not only will the prison remain open, the new administration's executive order gives the Secretary of Defense the authority to transfer more detainees to the prison camp. At present, there are still 41 detainees being held in Gitmo, the majority of whom have not faced trial. Patty Cullen reports.
A big stage and a chance to make good on a big campaign promise. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a newly signed executive order. He will keep the controversial Guantanamo Bay military prison open.
In the past, we have foolishly released hundreds and hundreds of dangerous terrorists, only to meet them again on the battlefield, including the ISIS leader, al-Baghdadi, who we captured, who we had, who we released.
Both of those statements are just not true. ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was released in 2004 by Iraq. And according to the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, of the 714 Gitmo detainees that have been released, 121 are suspected of returning to the fight. That's around 17%. The executive order says detainees can be transferred to the prison, but it doesn't mean they will be. It gives the Secretary of Defense 90 days to decide if anyone should be sent there. A decision to do that would be controversial to many across the globe.
The international community needs to condemn the latest statement from Donald Trump, President Trump, saying that he will keep the prison open. We know it doesn't work. We know it costs a vast amount. And we know that the human rights abuses are manifold, and it's a stain on any justice system.
There are 41 detainees still being held in Guantanamo. The majority have not yet faced trial, and even those cleared for release are facing an uncertain future as the Trump administration decides if others will meet the same fate.
Meanwhile, the United States has designated the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, a global terrorist and imposed sanctions against him for terror attacks against the U.S. and Israeli citizens. Hamas has branded the U.S. decision a violation of international laws. The Trump administration's actions against the leader of the Palestinian group come in the wake of the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and cutting funding to the United Nations aid organization UNRWA in the occupied Palestinian territories and Syria. Rosalind Jordan has the details.
The United States formally declared the Palestinian group Hamas a terrorist organization in 1997. 21 years later, Washington says Hamas's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, is himself a specially designated global terrorist because, thanks to his leadership, Hamas has killed 17 Americans. The designation means that any assets Haniyeh has in the U.S. are now frozen. He can't travel there, and U.S. persons cannot give him any financial support. One official says Haniyeh is a clear threat to U.S. national security.
Haniyeh has been a member of Hamas since the 1980s, and he rose through the ranks in large part by continually championing terrorism against Israel. Haniyeh's calls for a renewed intifada just last month underscore how important today's designation is. We will not be distracted by Hamas's efforts to obscure its true and bloody nature.
Haniyeh called for a new uprising against Israel in December because of this.
We are no closer to a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians.
The U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, something mandated by Congress, welcomed by the Israeli government, and condemned by Palestinians who want East Jerusalem to be the capital of their future nation. While Haniyeh attended a funeral for a Hamas member, his aides told reporters they don't take the U.S.'s move seriously.
It is clear that putting the name of Ismail Haniyeh on the terrorism list by the Americans came at a time that the U.S. administration is targeting Jerusalem. Putting sanctions and preventing the aid of the UNRWA, which is a continuation of the crimes against the Palestinian people.
Terrorism is not our style. We are not terrorists. It is forbidden in our Islam and our religions. For this reason, we are considering the statement of Trump is the foolish statement committed by people who know nothing about freedom fighting.
The U.S. says it will do all it can to stop Hamas from destabilizing the Middle East. The problem for the Trump administration, Hamas says it won't be deterred.
Still to come in this evening's news presentation, the weather, Carib update, and sports. Sports leaders made craven and spineless decisions to overturn life bans given to Russian athletes, says British International Olympic Committee member Adam Pengilly. The former skeleton athlete told BBC Sport he was appalled and angry after the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS, overturned the suspensions of 28 Russians for doping and partially upheld 11 other appeals today. Pengeli said it is a desperate and dark day for sport, with cheats and thieves allowed to triumph. He added that the silent and clean majority are being made to suffer through having to attain a ridiculous burden of proof and by the craven and spineless decisions of those who lead. CAS said the evidence was insufficient to prove doping in 28 cases, though the IOC insisted the ruling did not mean the athletes would be invited to this month's Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, where 169 of their compatriots are being allowed to compete as neutrals after the country was officially banned. Last year, 43 Russians were banned for life after an IOC investigation into state-sponsored doping at their home Sochi Games in 2014. The Oswald Commission, tasked with looking into individual cases of doping, was opened following the findings of the World Anti-Doping Agency's McLaren report. It concluded Russian athletes benefited from state-sponsored doping programs between 2011 and 2015, speaking of a cover-up that evolved from uncontrolled chaos to an institutionalized and disciplined medal-winning conspiracy. In reaching its decision, CAS said it considered the testimony from experts including former Russian anti-doping official and whistleblower Dr. Gregory Rodchenkov and Canadian lawyer Professor Richard McLaren, who authored a damning 2016 report into doping in Russia. And with that look at sport, we now have a look at this evening's weather forecast. Over St. Kitts and Nevis tonight, we can expect partly cloudy conditions with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Seas are moderate with significant wave heights of 1.2 to 1.8 meters or 4 to 6 feet, occasionally reaching 2.4 meters or 8 feet. Winds are east-northeasterly at 9 to 16 miles per hour. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:42 a.m. The sea level pressure is 1,017.0 millibars or 30.03 inches. And that brings us to the end of this evening's news presentation. Thank you so much for tuning in. However, a recap of this evening's top stories. Nationally, Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris has rejected allegations of sexual assault in the Attorney General's chambers. Internationally, Donald Trump has signed an order to keep Guantanamo Bay prisons opened. And in sport, an International Olympic Committee members calling the CAS Russia ruling craven and spineless. I've been your presenter this evening, Ebony Brandon. Thanks again for tuning in. Stay with us. Up next, Carib Update.